Volume 3, Chapter 5 of The Widow Barnaby by Frances Milton Trollope. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. Agnes receives an unexpected visitor, and an important communication. She also receives a letter from Cheltenham and from her aunt Barnaby. Agnes was roused from this state of melancholy musing by a double knock at the door. "Is it possible," she said, starting up, "that she spoke truly, and that she is already released?" The street door was opened, but the voice of Mrs. Barnaby did not make its way up the stairs before her, a circumstance so inevitable upon her approach, that after listening for it in vain for a moment, the desolate girl resumed her attitude, and endeavoured to recover the train of thought that had been broken. But she was not destined to do so, at least for the present, for the maid threw open the drawing-room door, and announced, "A gentleman." Agnes, as we have said, was sitting in darkness, and the girl very judiciously placed her slender tallow candle in its tin receptacle on the table, saying, as she set a chair for "the gentleman," "I will bring candles in a minute, miss," and then departed. Agnes raised her eyes as the visitor approached, and had the light been feebler still, she would have found no difficulty in discovering that it was Colonel Hubert who stood before her. He bowed to the angle of the most profound respect, and though he ventured to extend his hand in friendly greeting, he took hers with the air of a courtier permitted to offer homage to a sovereign princess. Agnes stood up, she received his offered hand, and raised her eyes to his face, but uttered no word either of surprise or joy. Her face was colourless, and traces of very recent tears were plainly visible. She trembled from head to foot, and Colonel Hubert, frightened, as a brave man always is when he sees a woman really sinking under her sex's weakness, replaced her on the sofa almost as incapable of speaking as herself. "Do not appear distressed at seeing me, dearest Miss Willoughby," said he, "or I shall be obliged to repent having ventured to wait on you. I should not have presumed to do this had not your friends, your truly attached friends, my aunt and sister, authorized my doing so." "Oh, what kindness!" exclaimed poor Agnes, bursting into a flood of most salutary tears. "Do not think me ungrateful, Colonel Hubert, if I could not say, if I did not speak to you. Do you indeed come to me from Lady Elizabeth?" "Here are my credentials," he replied, smiling, and presenting a letter to her. "We learned that your foolish aunt forgive me, Miss Willoughby, but the step I have taken can only be excused by explaining it with the most frank sincerity. We learned that Mrs. Barnaby, having quitted Cheltenham suddenly, the ostensible reason for doing which was bad enough, had left a variety of debts unpaid, and that her creditors, alarmed at her not returning, were taking active measures to secure her person. Is this true? Is your aunt arrested?" "She is," replied Agnes faintly. "Good God! You are here, then, entirely alone?" "I am quite alone," was the answer, though it was almost lost in the sob that accompanied it. "Oh, dearest Agnes!" cried Colonel Hubert, in a burst of uncontrollable emotion, "I cannot see you thus, and longer retain the secret that has been hidden in my heart almost from the first hour I saw you. I love you, Agnes, beyond all else on earth. Consent to be my wife, and danger and desertion shall never come near you more." What a moment was this to hear such an avowal! Human life can scarcely offer extremes more strongly marked of weal and woe than those presented by the actual position of Agnes, and that proposed to her by the man she idolized. But let de la Rochefoucauld say what he will, there are natures capable of feeling something nobler than the love of self; and after one moment of happy triumphant swelling of the heart that left no breath to speak, she heaved a long deep sigh that seemed to bring her back from her momentary glimpse of an earthly paradise to things as they are, and said slowly, but with great distinctness, "No, never will I be your wife. Never by my consent shall Colonel Hubert ally himself to disgrace." Had this been said to a younger man, it is probable that he would not have found in it anything calculated to give a mortal wound to his hopes and wishes. But it fell with appalling coldness on the heart of the brave soldier, who had long kept Cupid at defiance by the shield of Mars, and who had just made the first proposal of marriage that had ever passed his lips. It was her age and his own that rose before him as she uttered her melancholy, "No, never;" and Agnes became almost the first object to whom he had ever, even for a moment, been unjust. He gave her no credit, no, not the least, for the noble struggle that was breaking her heart, and meant most sincerely what he said when he replied, "Forgive me, Miss Willoughby. Had I been a younger man, the offer of my hand, my heart, my life, would not have appeared to you as it doubtless must do now, the result of sober, staid benevolence, desirous of preserving youthful innocence from unmerited sorrow. Such must my love seem. So let it seem, but it shall never cost one hour's pain to you." He was silent for a moment, and had to struggle, brave man as he was, against feelings whose strength perhaps only showed his weakness. " But even so," he added, making a strong effort to speak steadily, " even so, let me not be here in vain. Listen to me as a friend and father." Poor Agnes ! This was a hard trial. To save him, worshipped as he was, from a marriage that must be considered as degrading, she could have sacrificed herself with the triumphant courage of a proud martyr ; but to leave him with the idea that she was too young to love him, to let that glowing, generous heart sink back upon itself, because it found no answering warmth in her, who would have died only to purchase the light of owning that she never did, and never could, love any man but him. It was too terrible, and the words, " Hubert, beloved Hubert," were on her lips, but they came no farther, for she had not strength to speak them. Another effort might have been more successful, and they, or something like them, might have found way, had not the gentleman recovered his voice first, and resumed the conversation in a tone so chillingly reserved that the timid, broken spirited girl had no strength left to prick the sides of her intent, and lay her innocent heart open before him. " In the name of Lady Elizabeth Norris, let me entreat you, Miss Willoughby, not to remain in a situation so every way objectionable," he said. " My aunt and sister both are full of painful anxiety on your account, and the letter I have brought contains their earnest entreaties that you should immediately take up your residence with my aunt. Do not refuse this from any fear of embarrassment, of persecution from me. I shall probably go abroad. I shall probably join my friend Frederick at Paris. He did you great justice, Miss Willoughby, and but for me, perhaps Forgive me. I will no longer intrude on you. Forgive me. Tell me you forgive me for all the pain I have caused you, and for more injury, perhaps, than you will ever know. I never knew how weak, I fear I should say how unworthy, my character might become, till I knew you. And to complete the hateful retrospect," he added with bitterness, and rising to go, " to complete the picture of myself that I have henceforth to contemplate, I was coxcomb enough to fancy But I am acting in a way that I should scorn a youth for who numbered half my years. Answer my aunt's letter, Miss Willoughby. Answer it as if her contemptible nephew did not exist. He shall exist no longer where he can mar your fortune or disturb your peace." Agnes looked at him as if her heart would break at hearing words so harsh and angry, when, losing at once all sense of his own suffering, Colonel Hubert reseated himself, and in the gentlest accent of friendship alluded to the propriety of her immediately leaving London, and to the anxiety of her friends at Cheltenham to receive her. " They are very, very good to me," said Agnes meekly, " and I shall be most thankful, Colonel Hubert, to avail myself of such precious kindness, if the old aunt to whom I have written in Devonshire should refuse to save me from the necessity of being a burden on their benevolence." " But shall you wait for this decision here, Miss Willoughby ?"" I have promised to do so," replied Agnes ;" and as I may have an answer here on Thursday, I think, at latest, I would not risk the danger of offending her by putting it out of my power immediately to obey her commands, if she should be so kind as to give me any." The eyes of Agnes were fixed for a moment on his as she concluded this speech, and there was something in the expression of that look that shook the sternness of his belief in her indifference. He rose again, and making a step towards her, said, with a violence of emotion that entirely changed the tone of his voice, " Agnes, Miss Willoughby, answer me one question. Should my aunt herself plead for me, would you be my wife?" Agnes, equally terrified lest she should say too little or too much, faltered as she replied, " If it were possible, Colonel Hubert, could I indeed believe that your aunt, your sister, would not hate and scorn me? You might, you will let me believe it possible you could be brought to love me, Agnes? No, do not answer me. Do not commit yourself by a single word. Stay then here, but do not leave the house. Stay till yet, alas, I dare not promise it. But you will not leave this house, Miss Willoughby, with any aunt, without letting my family know where you may be found." " Oh no !" said Agnes with a reviving hope. that if they must be parted, which this reference to her aunt and his own doubtful words made it but too probable would be the end of all, at least it would not be because he thought she was too young to love him. " Oh, no !" she repeated, " this letter will not be left without an answer." " And you will not stir from these rooms alone ?" he replied, once more taking her hand. " Not if you think it best," she answered, frankly giving hers, and with a smile, moreover, that ought to have set his heart at ease about her thinking him too old to love. And for the moment perhaps it did so, for he ventured to press a kiss upon that hand, and uttering a fervent " Heaven bless and guard you !" disappeared. And Agnes then sat down to muse again. But what a change had now come o'er the spirit of her dream ! Where was her abject misery ? Where the desolation that had made her almost fear to look around and see how frightfully alone she was ? Her bell was rung, her candles brought her, tea was served ; and though there was a fulness and palpitation at the heart which prevented her taking it, or eating the bread and butter good naturedly intended to atone for her untasted dinner, quite in the tranquil, satisfactory, and persevering manner that might have been wished, everything seemed to dance before her eyes en couleur de rose, till at last, giving up the attempt to sit soberly at the tea table, she rose from her chair, clasped her hands with a look of grateful ecstasy to heaven, and exclaimed aloud, " He loves me ! Hubert loves me ! Oh, happy, happy Agnes !"" Did you call, miss ?" said the maid, entering, from having heard her voice as she passed up the stairs. Agnes looked at her and laughed. " No, Susan," she replied, " I believe I was talking to myself." " Well, that is funny," said the girl, " and I'm sure it is a pity such a young lady as you should have no one else to talk to. Shall I take the things away, miss ?" Once more left to herself, Agnes set about reading the letter, which hitherto had lain untouched upon the table, blushing as she opened it now, because it had not been opened before. The first page was from Lady Elizabeth, and only expressed her commands, given in her usual peremptory tone, but nevertheless mixed with much kindness, that Agnes should leave London with as little delay as possible, and consider her house as her home till such time as an eligible situation could be found, in which her own excellent talents might furnish her with a safer and more desirable manner of existence than any her aunt Barnaby could offer. The remainder of the letter was filled by Lady Stephenson, and expressed the most affectionate anxiety for her welfare ; but she too referred to the hope of being able to find some situation that should render her independent, so it was sufficiently evident that neither of them as yet had any idea that this independence might be the gift of Colonel Hubert. " It is nonsense to suppose they will ever consent to it," thought Agnes ; and this time her spirits were not so exalted as to make her breathe her thoughts aloud. " But I never can be so miserable again as I have been. It is enough happiness for any one person in this life, that everybody says is not a happy one. It is quite enough to know that Hubert loves me. Oh, Hubert ! Noble Hubert ! How did I dare to fix my fancy on thee ? Presumptuous ! But yet he loves me." And with this balm, acting like a gentle opiate upon her exhausted spirits, she slept all night and dreamed of Hubert. The 4 o'clock delivery of the post on the following day brought her this letter from her aunt Barnaby. " Dear Agnes, The brutality of these Cheltenham people is perfectly inconceivable. Mr. Crayton, my broker, and my poor father's broker before me, came to me as early as it was possible last night ; and I explained to him fully, and without a shadow of reserve, the foolish scrape I had got into, which would have been no scrape at all if I had not happened to fall into the hands of a parcel of rascals. He undertook to get the sum necessary to release me by 11 o'clock this morning, which he did, good man, with the greatest punctuality, paid that villainous Simmons, got his receipt and my discharge, when just at the very moment when I was stepping into the coach that was to take me from this hateful place, up came the same two identical fellows that insulted us in Half Moon Street, and arrest me again at the suit of right. Such nonsense ! As if I could not pay them all 10 times over, as easy as buy a pot of porter. But they care no more for reason than a pig in a sty. So here I am shut up again until that dear old man Crayton can come, and get through all the same tedious work again. You can't conceive how miserably dull I am ; and what's particularly provoking, I gave order trying to have you with me as soon as old Crayton told me I should be out by noon to day ; and therefore, Agnes, I want you to set off the very minute you receive this, and come to me for a visit. You may come to me for a visit, though I can't have you in without special leave. Mind not to lose your way ; but it's uncommonly easy if you will only go by what I say. Set out the same way that we went to the church, you know, and keep on till you get to the Haymarket, which you will know by its being written up. Then, when you've got down to the bottom of it, turn sharp round to your left, and just ask your way to the Strand. And when you have got there, which you will in a minute, walk on, till you come to the bottom of a steep hill, and then stop and ask some one to show you the way to the Fleet Prison. When you get there, any one of the turnkeys will be able to show you to my room, and a comfort I'm sure it will be to see you in such a place as this. And do, Agnes, buy as you come along half a dozen cheesecakes and half a dozen queen cakes, and a small jar, for about 4 or 5 shillings, of brandy cherries. And what's a great comfort, I may keep you till it's dark, which is what they call shutting up time, and then you can easy enough find your way back again by the gaslight, which is 10 times more beautiful than day, all along the streets from one end of the town to the other. Only think of that dirty scoundrel Morrison never coming near me, after all that passed, too, and all the wine he drank, shabby fellow. There is one very elegant-looking man here that I meet in the passage every time I go to my bedroom. He always bows, but we have not spoken yet. Bring 5 sovereigns with you, and be sure set off the moment you get this. Your affectionate aunt, Martha Barnaby. It needs not to say the sort of effect which the tone of this letter produced on a mind in itself delicate and unsunned as the bells of the valley lily, and filled to overflowing with the image of the noble Hubert. Yet there were other feelings that mingled with this deep disgust. She pitied her aunt Barnaby, and could any decent or womanly exertion have done her good, or even pleasure, she would not have shrunk from making it. But what she asked was beyond her power to perform, and moreover she had promised Colonel Hubert not to leave the house. How dear to her was the recollection of this injunction! How delightful the idea that his care and his commands protected her from the horrors of such a progress as that sketched out by her aunt Barnaby! To obey her was therefore altogether out of the question, but she sat down to write to her, and endeavoured to soften her refusal by pleading her terror of the streets at any hour, and her total want of strength and courage to undertake such an expedition, adding that she supposed by her account there could be no doubt of their meeting in Half Moon Street on the morrow. But the morrow and its morrow came without bringing Mrs. Barnaby. In fact, writ after writ had poured in upon her, but hoping still to evade those yet to come, she only furnished herself with what each one required, and so prolonged her imprisonment to the end of the week. Her indignation at Agnes's refusal to come to her was excessive, and she answered her letter by a vehement declaration that she would never again inhabit the same house with her. This last epistle ended thus: "If you don't wish to be turned neck and heels into the street the moment I return, look out for a nursery maid's or a kitchen maid's place, if you will. Only take care never to let me set eyes upon you again. Ungrateful wretch! What is Morrison's ingratitude to yours? For nearly 7 months you have eaten at my cost, been lodged at my cost, travelled at my cost, ay, and been clothed at my cost too. And what is the return? I am in prison for debts which, of course, were incurred as much for you as for myself, and you refuse to come to me. Never let me see you more, never let me hear your name, and never again turn your thoughts or hopes to your forever offended aunt, Martha Barnaby." Little as Agnes wished to continue under the protection of Mrs. Barnaby, this peremptory dismissal was exceedingly embarrassing. She had declined immediately accepting the invitation of Lady Elizabeth in a manner that made her very averse to throwing herself upon it, till a positive refusal of assistance from her aunt Compton obliged her to do so; and being absolutely penniless, excepting inasmuch as she was entrusted with the key that secured the widow's small stock of ready money, her only mode of not undergoing to the letter the sentence which condemned her to wander in the streets, was remaining where she was till she received an answer from Miss Compton. It is certain that she submitted to thus seizing upon hospitality with the strong hand the more readily, as by doing so she was unable to obey the parting injunction of Colonel Hubert; and bracing her courage to the meeting that must take place should Mrs. Barnaby's release precede her own, she suffered the heavy interval of doubt to steal away with as little of the feverish restlessness of impatience as possible. CHAPTER VI.